jump straight to it. If we call this the Global AI Panel, the whole idea is to discuss, how you see the radiology industry evolve across your respective regions. We'll go through what role does AI play in assisting and helping with such challenges. So to begin with, sir, why don't we start with you? I would love your perspective on the challenges that you see, across radiology in Australia and New Zealand, and how you see AI adoption playing a role in this.
So I might start with a bit of a historical perspective. Radiology is one of the youngest branches of medicine, right? We are only about 130 years old now. 1895, that's when X-ray was invented. But it is one of the youngest, yet one of the most rewarding branches of medicine. And the advancements in technology that radiology has seen, there's hardly any other branch which has seen this. And the truth of the matter is that almost 70 to 80% of any patients who go through any part of the healthcare system, with the outpatient, inpatients, ED, ICU, they will necessarily go through radiology. So we are the doctors. So that is the role that radiologists play. But that brings that the success that we've created for ourselves obviously brings its own issues. And what we're facing right now is global radiologist workforce crunch, which when we're talking to all the societies across the world, there's one basic problem everywhere, the workforce issue that we're all facing. The workload that we have is obviously increasing. The practice of medicine itself has changed. It is a lot based on investigations, radiology and pathology. And what we're seeing is this constant, relentless demand for more and more and more imaging. But that's not just the numbers, but it's also the complexity is increasing. The number of sequences, there were sequences that were not even there 10 years ago on MR and so on and so forth. So that has increased. So there are not enough training positions anywhere across the globe that we see right now. So that is our real issue. Then of course role extension comes into this with the radiographers, sonographers, wanting to take a part of the pie. But that is where we are. We are at cutting edge technology, but at the same time we haven't got enough people to do what we need to do. So that is, I think, where AI comes into being. And this is something that it will not replace, but it will not automate, but it definitely augment. So I might just stop there and let Vijay and Shah take over.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. So let me build on that. So right now, as Dr. Ratan said, there's a real shortage of workforce, and it's a global shortage. And everyone's looking for solutions. And the demand continues to grow. So there's a big mismatch between supply and demand for radiology services and supply of radiologists. Now, AI looks very promising. Everyone is looking towards AI to help alleviate some of this shortage or reduce burnout of radiologists. Now, if you look back for AI, in the last decade, AI has really progressed. There's been an incredible amount of innovation in AI. The field is progressing very rapidly. And it's exciting. I still remember at RSNA when we had only, maybe 10 booths, and now look at it, how much, activity there is. And we've gone from the days of rule-based AI to machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, and now, of course, looking forward to foundation models. The question is, despite all this progress, the adoption in clinical workflow has really lagged behind. And if you look globally, less than half of the radiologists today actually use AI in their clinical practice. And that too on a very limited basis. And that is the challenge. That's what we have to solve. How do we make it so that it gets adopted into clinical seamless integration, so it really makes the radiologist more efficient? And of course, the benefits are enormous, right? Whether it's operational efficiency, radiologist efficiency, reducing burnout, and also, so there's so many facets to this. And also, I want to give time to Shah to address some of
I
this.
think
Yeah.
you both addressed the question very well. I think the way I see radiology going is there is a demand and supply issue. The main thing I see going forward is that currently radiologists monopolize the outputs of radiology imaging data. Over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to massively change. The way it's going to change is that you're going to get a high integration of skills mix, reporting text, reporting radiographers. They're going to absorb some of the work, and that will be AI assisted. But equally, the role of the attending consultant radiologist is going to change with the integration of AI. You're very right in what you said, is that despite all of this noise and hype around us and the number of booths that we see, and with the current evidence base that we have, why we've not integrated AI more within our daily practices? That's because there's very few radiology imaging studies that require binary outputs. So in screening studies, where it's cancer, non-cancer, AI works very well. But for most of the work that we do, neuroradiologist, body radiologist, chest radiologist, what a radiologist actually does is taking multi-omic, multi-point data and assimilating that. It's almost like a consultation between the clinical history that you have, access to EHRs, access to previous imaging, and you make an informed decision. That's almost a consultation. AI can't replicate that level of reasoning. So where we will see it integrated is in these screening pathways: breast, lung cancer, prostate, very good. But for the bread and butter of what we do, because we're processing so many data points, it's not going to come to fruition in the way most people think. Now, so when, where will we see AI integrated? We need AI to be able to see things in the data that the radiologist can't see with their eyes. So integrations of EHRs, multiomics, genomics, and then really create bespoke outputs that take a whole host of data points that can add value in terms of prognostication, novel imaging biomarkers. Of course, these require validation, and it's not a quick process. Until we move to AI, autonomous AI on the quick wins, it's going to be very difficult to make a business case for the procurement of AI in most health systems. Automation is coming, but it requires a culture change, it requires patient-public involvement, it requires RCTs, and again, that's not quick. But, I'm still hopeful in my lifetime we're going to move the needle to widespread adoption.
No, thanks. I think thanks for setting the context, I guess. I was probably going to jump down to automation and autonomous solutions, later in our discussion, but now that we're in it, I want to rewind, take a few steps back and talk about adoption of AI in an assistive fashion and not just, an autonomous model. You very rightly said, Dr. Rao, that while we see all these AI developers, we see tremendous advancements, adoption has been excruciatingly slow. And I want to understand from all your perspectives on why do you feel, what is it that is, that's stopping or that's making you wary to adopt, something that is actually assistive in nature and is allowing you to test whether it is or not, and then deploy it, in your workflow. So, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the challenges has been that so far the algorithms have been very narrow. They are very narrow algorithms. And I think people want to see what's the value add, because to really justify the cost, it's expensive for any health system or any practice to bring in AI into their practice. It's expensive. Number two, people want to know, how do you really validate this? How do you know that the outcomes that you're seeing from the AI is really reliable, right? And then, so people want to be able to measure the value add. How is it improving outcomes? How do we know it's accurate, reproducible? and how is it integrated into the workflow? Number two, the IT folks at every institution are very concerned about security of data. Is there data breach? How do you maintain that the data is secure and it's not leaving? But although, in the next 5 years, globally, we'll see there'll be more migration of data to the cloud. No doubt about that, because there's no other way to handle it, right? So I think the challenges to, answer your question has been exactly this. How do you convince your leaders at the institution who have to write the check that A, there's value add, that, there's return on investment. Number two, there's accuracy. Number three, it's really making a difference to patient outcome, that it's improving patient care. And with narrow algorithms, it has been very challenging because of the complexity of how much it takes to, to deploy each narrow algorithm. I think the future with the foundation models, that may change. It looks very promising, but again, we have seen a lot of promises with AI, and we'll have to wait and watch and see how it develops.
Yeah, again, very, very good points. I think, there are the slowness to adopt. There are two major answers I see. There's one, how do you make it profitable, or where's the return on investment? There's also a technical challenge with the deployments. We've got so many vendors working in different spaces. It requires an extreme amount of heavy lifting for a radiology department to integrate one algorithm. And now, they're being hit with 10, 12 use cases. Hence the introduction of platforms. Platforms can do those integrations with you. They can also do the post-market surveillance for you. But there are questions around having a third-party platform. Most vendors don't want a third-party platform doing post-market surveillance, measuring the drift, because they think that's proprietary data. Equally, no one's worked out at what price point AI should be procured at. The platform adds another layer of cost within that already convoluted system. My personal opinion is that a platform deployment is the way to go. If I was a radiology manager in a department, I just want the platform to take care of all the integrations. But again, it's the costing. I don't think we've worked it out. And once we work out the value of the end algorithm and the patient benefit and the mitigation of misses and whatnot, then it will become much clearer which price point it can come into. Currently, I think there's a mismatch in the end vendors and platform companies as to where this price comes in at.
Thanks, Dhruv. I completely agree with what Vijay and Shah have said, but I'm talking from Australia and New Zealand perspective. See, AI has been obviously a disruptor in the field because there's nothing already said to credential this or approve this or even look at AI. Because traditionally we've been dealing with medicines, FDA, TGA, they look at medicine and they're used to that. We are used to looking at equipment that comes through and to evaluate this. This is something that people don't even know how to evaluate. For example, in Australia and New Zealand, the TGA has taken a very simple stand. They say whatever the FDA approves, we'll accept it. As simple as that. Because obviously they have no idea, and to set up a new structure in place, that is very, very hard. The second bit, and I've been trying to implement AI in Australia at my center and other places. The two challenges that we face, the first of all is the integration. So the integration piece, we often miss that. We think we just have to plug and play, you just get an AI vendor to come in. It's not that simple. To integrate that, but also more importantly, to integrate with the workflow of daily reporting. Not having to open a standalone application and all that. As it is, we are so busy. As it is, reporting is so onerous and time consuming. So something that is seamless, integrated, but that's not easy. That is a very difficult part. And the third aspect is that we would like, a one-stop shop, pretty much. A single model that solves all our problems. But then we are faced with this plethora of AI vendors. And then each vendor has a plethora of AI solutions. So then you're looking at something else for chest X-ray, something else for bone, something else for CT brain, and so on and so forth. And how to know that out of the 200 solutions that are there for CT brain or chest X-ray, which one is the validated one, which one is a good one? And then the last bit, of course, is that who is actually training those AI models? Who has, because garbage in and garbage out kind of thing. And how much can, what Professor Rao said, how much can we trust this? Is it accurate or not? So that comes into play. So there is a bit of reluctance there to understand which model will actually work in our particular setting. And we won't land into any problems. Privacy, of course, remains a huge issue, especially in Australia, because the law says that any image acquired in Australia cannot leave Australia, as simple as that. So we don't know where these images will go, at the back end where this cloud is, where the server is, all that kind of thing. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that because of all these aspects of validation AI, testing AI and all that, we necessarily have to incorporate it into radiology education. Our trainees need to know this. Our trainees need to know what questions to ask of people like Dhruv Sahai, right? When you come to us, they need to know that these are the basics of AI. This is how I'm going to use them, and what is the best way to validate them, what's the best way to test them.
Oh, interesting, and I like the way you touched upon both regulatory and foundation models, and in fact, those are going to be my next questions. Is foundational models, I think, is a very interesting scenario which I feel has not grown the way I would have expected it to grow. And it would be great to get your opinion on how do you see a foundational model, how do you see growth of foundational models, and if this is happening at your institutions vis-a-vis third-party models, because I would assume, and like we discussed earlier, that foundation models would be like tailor-made suits and not ready-made suits, right? What would be, I mean, where do you see foundational models and the future of foundational models going from here?
So we've got very limited experience with foundational models. In Australia and New Zealand, we are primarily based on the third-party vendors that are coming in. And we know that quite a lot of research comes from the North American continent itself, and the amount of data available here and the amount of research available here. We are a much smaller market down there. So very limited experience with foundational models. There are some fledgling approaches there in some centers, but primarily it's all third-party vendors. But of course, foundational models, I think Bharati Khurana is trying to set up something at Harvard. And the obvious advantage is because this is homegrown, this is addressing your immediate need. You know what will work at your place, at your center with your workflows. And obviously because you've developed it, you can tweak it as the need comes in. So that has a whole beauty about it. But then of course, if you want to take something ready-made, then you have to go to third-party models.
Yeah, foundation model is super interesting, but it doesn't solve the problems as to where the value add for AI is, right? So, when I started in this radiology AI space back in 2016, a lot of conversations with the regulators were, how do you regulate AI from separating software as a medical device using AI from traditional medical devices. The regulatory approval it's the bare minimum to tell you something's safe to deploy. But, we've moved away from that conversation many years ago. It's now about, should we deploy? How do we make it profitable to deploy? And I don't think foundation models are going to change that. All foundation models tell us is a window into the future of how good the technology will be. And while sometimes we can sound overly negative with our perception of AI in its current status, it's clear as day that the role of the radiologist in the future will be completely changed with it. And AI, whether it's today, 18 months, 5 years, there has to be an acceptance that this is the future. This automated assistance, everything we're doing now is just to move the needle to get us closer to better patient outcome. I'm no doubt in my mind that with newer foundation models, once we've done the health economics piece, that we will improve radiology read time, they'll be more accurate, we'll find novel insights into imaging data, help triage patients to the right care. So whilst there's hesitance amongst people practicing now, there has to be an acceptance that 10 years from now, we will all adopt AI into our practices, just as we did MR when it first came to the market all those years ago, into the 70s.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with everything. And I think I want to challenge a little bit here. So I think institutions or health systems or large practices that have talented folks who can actually do the development and, then deployed, tested, validated foundation models would be an amazing blessing. On the other hand, there'll be people who will be left behind even more and more. The gap will continue to increase and the inequities will continue to rise. And that's a global concern that I think we should all have if we are thinking globally about health disparities and health inequities. I think we will be adding to that in a very big way. One way to address that would be if all the PACS vendors, since they have access to the data, if the PACS vendors created a consortium of some kind and develop foundation models that then they can actually bring to bear to, because everybody has PACS. I mean, you have to have PACS to work with. I think they can play a major role here to make sure that the disparities don't continue, the gap doesn't continue to increase. So I wanted to just throw that out as a challenge to think about.
Also, I just want to add that, we approach, our experience of AI is working in very established healthcare systems where the AI is basically going against a highly trained radiologist who has quite a lot of resources at their disposal. What we do need to mention is that the emerging markets, where you have even fewer radiologists, even less training, AI will reduce those health inequalities, and that's where the massive gains are. So it's just something to be conscious of.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize, Rajiv's point about the training, because even today in, very sophisticated departments, we bring in an algorithm and not every radiologist is excited to use it. In fact, that's because you need clinical leaders, you need clinical champions who will promote and educate and train even the mature radiologists and of course trainees, who are in the pipeline to really learn how to use it, because initially it takes time, just like any other modality, right? And also it's critical that trainees get exposed to this so they learn how to recognize artifacts, where the AI is going off track. How do you detect that? Just like with MR, we didn't have to learn real deep physics of MR, but we had to learn how to recognize MR artifacts or CT artifacts. So I look at it in a very similar fashion for AI, that training I don't think has been incorporated into the curriculum yet, and it really needs to be.
I might just verge a little bit, but just going in a similar fashion, similar vein. So we are at this point in time training trainees, but we will also be supervising and training AI. So it will be like we're training our trainees, at the same time we're also training AI. So AI in that sense will become a training of sort, a non-human training of sort. But to touch upon the point that both of you made here to address health inequities, especially in the Australia and New Zealand context, we see that very often that the moment you get 50 kilometers outside of any major metro, the number of radiologists significantly drops. So this is where AI, Dhruv and all of you can really, really help to address those inequities in rural and regional areas. That also aligns with goals of almost all governments across the world, because all the governments want better healthcare for the rural regional areas. So if we do that, we'll also be solving some of the government's problems.
No, definitely makes sense. I also I know we do have some time, and I want to also touch upon the two major R's apart from radiology, which is regulatory and reimbursements, and how the future of AI adoption looks. And I want to start with regulatory. I mean, you very rightly said that TGA looks at an FDA clearance and says it's good to go. At the same point, we say the world can't operate on a one-size-fits-all model. At the same point, we say a model trained in the US will not have the same accuracy or results in Australia. So how do you see the regulatory landscape shaping up? We know EU is doing great progress in this, with finally coming up with regulations like the AI Act. Where do you see, this shaping up in Australia and New Zealand, and of course Shah in UK and MAM in North America?
So I might just start off. Actually, there was a very good initiative, and John Slevotnik, who's our current president of the Royal Australian New Zealand College of Radiology, he was our first chair of the Artificial Intelligence Committee, and this is going way back to 2017. Based on his work and the AI Committee's work, all the international organizations, including the RSNA, ARRS, and Europeans and British, came out with a position statement on how to validate and test AI. So that is a public document, it's there. So that was kind of the seed that is there, but it's not in the regulatory space. So all the radiology society in the world have come together, which is a fantastic initiative. They put it out there. It's for all governments to look at and learn from. But the governments and the regulators are not limited to this at all. They're not tuned to this at all. Probably in the United States, they're a bit more than the rest of the world. From our point of view, what we are trying to do is educate the regulator. Just tell them what the benefits are, what the advantages are, how it will help. And then obviously the first question that they come up with, okay, for example, I've heard this from the horse's mouth in New Zealand. And a very senior functionary in the Ministry of Health in New Zealand said, okay, we don't need to train any more radiologists because AI is going to take over. So, you have to be wary of them going completely the other way in the spectrum. So you have to educate them, actually tell them realistically what this would entail, what it would mean, what benefits can gain, and how they are all interested in numbers and how much dollars will be saved. So you have to be very clear about what's the efficiency gain there, what patients will gain out of it, what outcomes will change. So our duty as radiology societies and radiologists and you as vendors is probably to educate them, not just once, but to continuously engage with them and educate them. That's how I would put it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There needs to be a constant feedback mechanism between end users, developers, and regulators. I think it's too convoluted to go through the regulatory process across different markets, and a little bit of common sense is required. I think we're going to see that in the UK with the MHRA, between UKCAs and CE markings and cross-acceptance, because all that happens is that it stifles innovation. And we're going to come to a point where it's going to become public knowledge that there are algorithms out there that can help patients. If the stumbling block is, the regulatory hurdle, then it's not a good look for the regulators. So they're going to want to move fast. They're going to want to tweak the way in which regulatory approvals are done so they can do it en masse and share across different markets. So otherwise, it would not be a good look for regulators. And they're there to ensure patient safety, but equally, they cannot stifle innovation because this space is moving faster and exponentially than anyone can think of. The regulators need to stay on top of that.
Yeah, so actually, I would love to hear your perspective and your experience, since you obviously are at the forefront of getting FDA approval for the algorithms and also for the platform. I mean, CARPL has the only platform, or the first platform that was approved as a platform by FDA. My concern, so that's separate. I would love to hear that because I think that's important. I think FDA approved a lot of these algorithms, narrow algorithms, and then kind of fixed it at a point, but these are self-learning algorithms. What happens in the future? How do we know that the algorithm is still performing, and how do you monitor that, and who's responsible? So it's a very difficult field for FDA to get a handle on, or, the regulatory issues are very difficult. But we would love to hear, what you faced. Yeah.
Before jumping into what we faced, I'll tell you, my thoughts on regulatory. I feel regulatory bodies, authorities, have the potential to be enablers and not deterrents. I feel if they are proactive in implementing and developing guidelines and frameworks, it will actually be assistive to the AI developers, to cater to that. I do agree 100% that continuous monitoring is definitely required, because how an AI solution performs today will not hold true tomorrow. I know the FDA has abbreviated applications that can be filed to basically update and upgrade your current approvals. For us, it was interesting. I mean, we decided to err on the side of caution. We decided to take a very conservative stand on it. Platforms operate, I feel, in a gray area where it does not fall under the definition of software as a medical device, because it does not alter images. It does not, provide any diagnosis. But we felt if we are showing secondary captures with annotations, if we are enabling accept reject on findings, we are enabling diagnosis. And I do believe then sooner or later, platforms would fall under the ambit of regulatory clearances. We decided to hold ourselves accountable to the highest of standards, because we don't want to be at a point where we are enabling AI adoption and suddenly FDA says, hey, you need a 510K clearance, or TGA says that a UKCA mark is required and we don't have it. I mean, when we are working in the healthcare industry, for us, and trust me, this is not a marketing pitch, but patients have to come first, and that's critical to us. That was a journey, but like Sir said, it was he actually nailed it. Once you have the FDA and the CE mark, the rest just happen. It's not complicated, and I think that needs to change. I think that needs to change, because I think every region, and like I said, I find the European Union and what they are doing is actually a step in the right direction. With the AI Act, it's set a framework, and we are not seeing that anywhere else. So that's my perspective on this. Okay, and now jumping, beyond this, I mean, I do want to touch upon the topic of reimbursements. I think that's the big question here on how do you see that shaping up? Because I guess to a very large extent, if not completely to that extent, the adoption of AI is very, very dependent on reimbursements. So I would love to get your views on that, and where do you see this going? Why don't we start with you?
I think we saw some reimbursement for like stroke algorithm, but it was mostly going to the hospital on the technical side. I am not convinced that anything that assists radiologists in making them more efficient, you can convince the government to pay for it. In fact, they would look at it the other way. We should reduce your reimbursement because you can read 50 scans now instead of 40. So I think it's a very, very careful balance, and I think if really there's a strong lobbying for it, all they're going to do is take money from this part and put it in the other part, reduce your reimbursement per RVU on the professional side, and then pay you add for the AI. So I'm not very optimistic that you can actually really get reimbursed for assisting radiologists in the interpretation. And the operational efficiency, you basically get your benefit by becoming more efficient. Instead of doing 4 scans, you do 6 scans. So you're already showing your ROI there. So I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm not optimistic about any additional reimbursement.
Yeah, so the NHS is value-based healthcare, right? So it's probably even more difficult to demonstrate a business case for where AI, for a radiology department to procure AI. So either you have shown overwhelmingly positive data for improvement in patient outcomes, or it's got to make your department more efficient, and that's where people are struggling. The NHS if you look at the two big markets of where radiology reads come out, you've got the NHS and then you've got teleradiology, who pick up a lot of the backlogs and outsourced work. The NHS does not have a quality issue per se, it has a volume issue. It has strict governance over the people that it hires, and it has strict governance in-house as to how you deal with discrepancies and whatnot. Continuous learning. Teleradiology is the other massive sector of where all these reads are taking place. They do have a quality issue because of the speed of the reads, the vetting of radiology. You know, they're getting radiologists from a bigger pool, not necessarily as skilled as your local hospital. So what we have seen is that there's very little adoption within the NHS. There's a huge amount of adoption within teleradiology markets. And that's simply because having the secondary capture, the primary AI read, will minimize the number of discrepancies because of the speed of the read and performing radiology. It's not when we look at the UK, there is adoption, it's just not within the NHS. Teleradiology is a different beast. And I don't know any teleradiology companies so far that haven't introduced an algorithm in the emergency care setting. And the feedback that I get from the vendors is that, you know, it is minimizing discrepancies, which helps teleradiology companies retain clients, retain customers. So that's where we are in the NHS.
Your view on this?
Dhruv, so we have to see this in the context of the global economy, I guess. We are in an era of a rapidly shrinking healthcare dollar, and there is no government in the world which has not accumulated a massive COVID debt because of the spending in COVID. And now, coming from a purely Australian New Zealand perspective, we are largely, at least in Australia, Medicare-based society, a healthcare system. So the vast majority is paid for by the federal government via Medicare. Medicare reimbursement was last revised 30 years ago. It hasn't changed since then. There has been indexation along a few times, but only a very few times. But it has not been revised. And every interaction that we have with the government now, they're asking us, how can we reduce it? Just exactly what you're saying. So my feeling is exactly as Professor Rao said, once we tell them that AI makes us more efficient, it takes us lesser time to read a scan, the first thing they will say is, can we reduce the reimbursement?
You know, that's a great perspective. And, you know, the first question that we started the panel discussion on was the challenges that we face across radiology globally. And the one thing that I've heard several times, and it stands out, is radiologist burnout, right? Now, when we say that the government won't reimburse because AI is actually improving efficiency, and they would say it's got operational benefits, you know, you could do 4 scans, now you can do 10. Then how does that take away the burnout problem?
I was just going to say that I haven't used an AI algorithm which makes my work more efficient. I find there's increased cognitive overload because I do my read, I click on the AI just to sense check if I've missed anything. I find myself actually processing the AI read, checking for false positives. Why has it said something positive when I've looked at it? So I haven't found that operational gain. It's slowing me down. I don't know what your experience is on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. And I think that's been the experience. And that's why people are not, even when you say, hey, this algorithm is available, you know, it's very hard for people to adapt it easily. I think one, you know, little off the tangent benefit could be this. Well, 2 things. I want to make 2 points. You know, one is there's workforce shortage, right? So are there studies that with AI can be read by non-radiologists, you know, plain films, for example? If we could just decompress the radiologist's workload by plain films and train either radiology technologists or APPs, and they are doing AI-assisted reads, I think that would be very beneficial and reduce the burnout. You know, the second point I wanted to make when we were talking about reimbursements, what's happening in the clinical practice is the opportunistic screening where you're picking up findings for things that you're not doing the study for. For those things now, people are charging patients. And, on a mammogram, if you use AI to pick up breast arterial calcification, that's an indicator of cardiac disease, then patients are given the choice. Do you want to pay $120 and get an AI read, which will pick up this, or not? I've had a lot of trouble with that in my mind, whether it's really appropriate or not appropriate, because again, people who can afford it will do it. People who can't afford it are not benefiting, even though the finding is there. So I think there's so many questions that you struggle with that I don't have any answers, but I can only add to your list of challenges. Right.
And to just Shah's comment, I have one of our senior consultants. He has this very interesting line about AI. He says that the cognitive load from AI, the sense checking that you're doing all the time, it's like correcting a very bad first-year registrar reports.
That's actually very well put.
Yeah, but just to the point of that, when we're talking about efficiency and burnout and well-being, I think we're focusing obviously on the reporting aspect of it, but there are several other aspects where AI can actually help a great deal in reducing burnout for radiologists. And I would start even from the referral process. For example, a good, robust clinical decision support system, especially for our junior referring colleagues, that will make a whole lot of sense. And if AI can tell them that this is the correct test at the correct time, that would go a long way. Then coming into the scanning aspect, obviously we have there's no CT or MR system in the world today which does not employ AI. So the sequences are becoming shorter, the resolution is improving, CT of course, the images are much, much better. But then if some AI could then do automated reformats, that would save a whole lot of time, because all of us, I'm sure, spend a whole lot of time doing vascular reformats, either us are doing or the radiographers are doing. So that will help a whole lot, the radiographers or us. There's so much time of the day that actually goes into preparing those reformats and looking at the vessels in all the different dimensions. So that will be a huge thing. And then just to create the tables for the reports, or just what was mentioned earlier, picking up all the data from the biochemistry, from the EMR, when was the last scan, what did that say, what are the blood tests currently saying, what is the doctor saying? If you bring all of that in, that definitely helps much, much more rather than just picking up nodules on a CT test, for example. So I think those gains are very small, imperceptible gains, but they amount to a lot, because that's where a radiologist time goes. We are opening up the power chart, looking at all the data, looking at all the blood tests. If that is ready-made and given to us, reformats are ready, there's appropriate referral at this end, then that will definitely reduce the burnout, help the well-being of radiologists.
You know, there's a misconception I keep hearing everywhere from vendors that, it's volume which is burning radiologists out. And if you remove, the 70% of normal studies and they can just focus on abnormal studies, that's what's going to burn out radiologists quicker, because you need a number of normal studies in your work list to readjust. But if you're only reporting, if you go from 10 normals and 10 abnormals, you just do 20 abnormals, you're not going to have many radiologists left. It will increase the burnout rate.
That's why you need outpatient studies mixed in with your coronary care, inpatient studies, and oncology patients. Totally agree with that. But I think I do want to underscore that point of, it's all the busy work. If you can get rid of the busy work, comparing, protocoling, and then laying out your images on the packs, comparison with old films, and all the measurements, the quantitative measurements, the lung nodules that you're measuring, comparing with the old studies, all that busy, repetitive work that really is boring, it's just frustrating, it's time-consuming. AI can help with that. That will go a long way to reduce burnout.
No, I think those have been some terrific insights. I know we are almost, I'm getting a time check, but no, I'm not just about done yet. I mean, it's not every day I get an opportunity to talk to the masterminds and get all terrific advice. But no, I actually put together a quick rapid fire. So questions with short answers, with no time to think, instinctive responses. So, and it's just like 4 or 5 questions. I'd love to do that. So let's start with the first one. And that is, AI replaces or AI amplifies?
Amplifies, I think.
Amplifies.
Yeah.
Awesome. Proprietary models or open models?
Open model.
Open.
Everybody's on the same page. Foundation models, hype or inevitable?
Innovate.
Yeah.
Inevitable.
All right, human in the loop or model in the loop?
Human.
Human is a
Human.
Diagnostic accuracy or workflow automation, which will matter more long term?
Yeah, that's workflow. Workflow.
All right, and who do you think will lead this development? Will it be academia, startups, or big tech?
Consortium.
Yeah.
Partnerships.
Partnership. Has to be partnership.
Awesome, man.
But the question was one, right?
Uh-huh.
Was a consortium is the answer, but you said one.
Yeah, that wasn't an option, but I'll let it slide.
So academics can only take this so far.
Yeah.
And what we've seen in history is that the groups that were just working in academic, they never managed to scale. And then big tech is too far removed from the coalface of what the problem is. So what was the third option?
Startups.
Startups. Yeah. Startups are where innovation happens. We've seen it, even if you look at Google, with all the resources that they have, they've never, and they've dabbled in medical imaging. They've never managed to commercialize an algorithm. Right. Where has innovation happened? Cannot underestimate just, how much innovation comes from a startup.
That's encouraging. And the last one, of course, the question that we are always asked, the favorite question. Will radiology ever fully go autonomous?
No.
No, only limited, low yield, repetitive, mundane tasks.
Right.
Yeah, it will never be. I thought your last question was going to be something else. I was just going to shout CARPL, which is the best AI platform. So I was just going to say CARPL.
No, I think, yeah. Now these days everybody's a platform, so that's interesting. But no, I mean, thank you so much. I think there have been terrific insights in this panel discussion. Lots to learn, and no, truly also with the feedback received, it's very encouraging for a platform like ours, who's trying to simplify the problem, offer a single layer of integration, more of an end-to-end solution. So we feel good that we're in the right track. And sorry, sir, you're saying something?
No, I just wanted to thank you, Rob, and to Vidur. I mean, every year I've been coming here, the CARPL stall has been bigger and bigger, and the number of staff that we're seeing is increasing, which is a fantastic sign. And you guys are doing great work across the globe. Thank you so much. It's very innovative, and I've really enjoyed with Professor Rao and Shah. I'm sure you would have enjoyed as well.
Thank you. We have a terrific panel of advisors and guides and mentors. I think that keeps us going.
Great job. Yeah, I want to echo this comments. Yeah. Great work.
Thank you. And I know we've had one gentleman in the audience. If you have any questions, we have 6 minutes. All right. Awesome. Perfect.
We scared everyone away.
I was enjoying this a lot.